Hi, welcome to the Freedom in Education Founders Podcast. Our nonprofit organization was born out of frustration over what was and wasn't being taught in the classroom and how little parents and classroom teachers had to say about it. Together, we can restore high quality education for all students so they can thrive and flourish as virtuous adults. We're glad you're joining us and hope that we can offer you some hope, encouragement, and most of all, solutions regarding the problems facing education in America today. I am honored and humbled to welcome my guest on the podcast today, Dr. Paul Kirschner. He is Emeritus Professor of Educational Psychology at the Open University in the Netherlands, visiting professor at Thomas More University of Applied Sciences in Belgium, honorary doctor at the University of Oulu in Finland, and owner of Kirschner Ed. He's a research fellow of the American Educational Research Association, the International Society of the Learning Sciences, and the Netherlands Institute for Advanced Study in the Humanities and Social Sciences. He is a relentless translator of educational research for use by teachers, trainers, designers, and policymakers. His two most recent books are How Learning Happens and How Teaching Happens, and his newest book, Instructional Illusions, will be available this fall, so you can go ahead and pre-order. So thank you and welcome to the podcast, Freedom in Education Podcast. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on here and share just a small tidbit of your knowledge with the audience.
Thanks, Beanie. With that introduction, I'd like to meet that guy. He sounds awesome.
Well, one thing that I left out of your introduction, because I didn't want it to get lost in the list of accolades and achievements and credentials, is that you have published over 400 articles on learning, instruction, and designing effective, efficient, and fulfilling education. And I didn't want our audience to miss that, because that is what has drawn me to follow you. I follow you on Substack. I follow you on X. I have your book. I actually keep your book, How Learning Happens, on my desk because I reference it all of the time. And so I'm just very thankful for the way that you do translate all of that educational research into very digestible terms that that classroom teachers can use. So talk a little bit about, I guess, why you decided, there's all this research out there about cognitive science and the science of learning, the science of teaching, and it's not getting to the classroom. So you have decided to take, what you find in research and what you discover and make it digestible for teachers. So talk about what made you do that movement.
I think the best word to describe my motivation is frustration. I used to be a teacher, and I decided I no longer wanted to teach because I got very frustrated. Because no matter what I tried to do, based upon what I had learned at the university, and that was in the United States, I just couldn't get across to certain students. And I didn't understand that. They were intelligent students. There was no reason why they shouldn't be able to understand it. I tried it all different types of ways. And there were still these students that I couldn't reach. And so I decided I didn't want to teach anymore. And I stopped and I did all types of other things, including moving out of the United States, moving to the Netherlands, and went back to university in the Netherlands and got a master's in educational psychology and did my PhD in educational psychology. And you could say it's all because I was frustrated and I wanted to know what you could do to make teaching more effective, efficient, and satisfying. What you could do to make the learning experience for my students more effective, more efficient, and more satisfying for them. And that's why I started doing the research. But I saw that it wasn't getting through. It wasn't getting through to my PhDs, the research that was being done by others. I would talk to them and I'd ask them about very basic seminal articles. I mean, if they were talking about priming, I'd say to them, well, how about thinking about Ernie Rothkopf and his ideas about mathemogenic activities and and adjunct questions. And the Dutch phrase for it is, they looked at me as if they were seeing water that was on fire. Yeah, what the heck is this man? Let's keep it clean. Talking about. So I got very frustrated that they didn't know their classics. And the longer I was busy with talking to teachers, I realized that they didn't know the classics and hadn't ever learned them. So I thought, okay, I'm reaching the end of my academic career. I had already had, let's say, 50 PhDs that I brought to a PhD. I had already written more than 400 articles, maybe 10, 12 books, 10 books at that time, I think. Maybe it's time to start thinking about that other population of people, teachers, and how I could make the materials accessible to them. So, out of frustration, making a short story long, I decided that it's my job, it's my duty to teachers and students everywhere to help teachers understand how we can learn more effectively, efficiently, and in a more satisfying way based upon good theory and good empirical research. Is that an answer?
Yeah, it's a great answer. I mean, really, I mean, just in our introduction, I said that freedom in education was born out of frustration. Like that's what it was. So we were frustrated with what was happening, but it's like we can shout into the void or we can do something about it. And so we went in search of solutions. So I think your frustration with the teaching and the learning and really the lack of understanding of how all of it happens. I think it's a great solution.
Thank you.
Yeah, your book, How Learning Happens, it's 35, summaries, I guess, of articles. And I'm thinking when I first started teaching, this book would have been incredibly valuable to me as a teacher. And I just actually read one of your Substack posts. It was a very short one the other day about your response to pledges and how you appreciated that people wanted to pledge their financial support, but that wasn't why you were doing this. You were doing this because it is you want to see teaching and learning improve, and so I just am incredibly grateful for that, and I hope that we'll be sure and put your Substack account out there and all that so that people can follow, and you post all the time on X all of your articles too. So I'm really grateful for that.
Okay.
Your comments about teachers not knowing this stuff actually sort of was my first question when I thought about this. So I graduated in 1997 with my teaching degree. And in chapter 7 of How Learning Happens, you all address John Sweller's article from 1988 about cognitive load theory. And that chapter alone to me would have changed the way I taught in the classroom when I was a full-time classroom teacher. I mean, just that one little summary that you all included in there. So I graduated in 1997. That article was published in 1988. I never once heard the term cognitive load or overload or anything like that in my teaching training. That was 5 years it took me to get my teaching degree.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is the case? And what do you think K-12 education would look like today if things like that were incorporated more into those programs?
Why? I have no idea. I can only speculate. And my speculation is that one, that your teachers had also never heard of it because they were also probably taught in a romantic constructivist school of how you should teach and how learners learn, which is wrong. Okay, let's just call a spade a spade. So number one, they didn't know about it. And number two, they probably thought it was hogwash because it went against the stream at that moment. And those two things are probably the reasons why you didn't learn it. But there's a deeper problem, I think, in teacher training, and that's I see teacher training as I shouldn't call it a cascade because it's not like one thing should happen before the other, but it's let's call it in some way just a flow chart or a cascade. So that if you teach, you have to know your domain. Yeah, that's like if you're teaching math, you have to know math. Schulman said you can't teach what you don't know. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. If you're an elementary school teacher and you're teaching reading, you should know how children learn to read. Yeah, or what reading is. But after that, you have to understand how we learn. That's You should have a good base in cognitive psychology. And I often um, equate that to doctors, that they need a good base in biology, physiology, anatomy, pathology in order to carry out their work. They have to know how the digestive system works. They have to know the difference between a virus and a bacteria. And just like that, it teaches us to understand our cognitive architecture, how our brains work, of which cognitive load theory is based upon that. Sensory memory, working memory, and long-term memory. If you know those two things, the next step is what you should have learned is the basis of all of the different, what we call in Netherlands, didactics. I know that's a dirty word in America. They think that means standing in front of the class and giving a lecture. It's not. It's the study of how we teach. Let's call it instruction. Yeah. So the third thing, say no, instruction, how we teach. Looking at it that way, you know what you want to teach. You know how we learn it. The next thing is, how are you going to teach it? Are you going? What instructional interventions are you going to use? Just like a doctor knows things and then choose, okay, what are we going to do? Should I choose for penicillin? Should I choose for some other thing? Those are the interventions that the doctor can choose from. After that, you have to know what tools you can use. Yeah. That could be everything from standing in front of the class and lecturing to using a smart board to virtual reality or whatever. I'm saying in that order because you know what you want to teach. You understand how people learn it. Because you do that, you choose the pedagogy that you want to use, the instructional intervention. Knowing the instructional intervention, you choose which tools you're going to make use of for the intervention. Going back to the doctor, it's got to be penicillin, but that could be a pill. That could be what's that thing that you put up your rear end? We
The
call it a
suppository.
suppository. We call it a Z pill in Dutch. Or it could be a suspension. It could be a needle, yeah, an injection. And depending upon your patient and how quickly it has to work and things like that, you then choose the tool you want to use. There could be a needle, there could be a suppository, yeah? And finally, you have to, what we call the pedagogy, and that's the classroom climate, classroom management. And I say it in that order because you know what you want to teach, you know how people learn, you choose the proper instructional intervention, you choose the tools you want to use, and you make sure that the climate is psychologically safe or whatever,
Right.
quiet, so that they can learn. Those are the 5 things that you should learn at the university. And I think that that's often not the case. Maybe you learn your domain. Maybe you learn things about how to keep a classroom quiet and all of these social, emotional aspects of it. You're taught a couple of tools, but those are kind of like a checklist. If you want to do this, use that. You're taught instructional interventions, but those have to be based upon how we learn.
Right.
Yeah? You choose your medicine as a doctor based upon the bodily functions and what you know about biology. So you don't choose penicillin if it's a virus because it doesn't work. So you can't just say, well, we'll give you the interventions and choose one. You have to choose one based upon what you know about how the body works. And you have to do the same thing in teacher training and as a teacher. And I think the major problem is that cognitive psychology, how our brain works, is not taught or taught well
Right.
at teacher training institutes the way it's taught well at medical schools.
Well, and just a side note, doctors will very rarely just allow you to discover or inquire the best method
You know,
to
and you don't
healing
want them to to do it in that way either.
you.
I mean, I often refer to the television program House, in which you see the difference between how his students work and how he works. Yeah, they go through a means ends solution path. It's called a weak method problem solving, weak problem solving method. And he doesn't. He looks at it and he says, well, I think it's that. Now I'll check whether it is that, instead of, well, first I should do this and then I'll check that. And, you know, that type of thing. It's just a different way. And I think that that curriculum, which I see as an ideal curriculum, not all of the elements are taught properly.
Yeah.
So teachers make use of checklists for interventions, not knowing whether it'll work beforehand. So you don't get a good reflective practitioner. You don't even know you to be a reflective practitioner, and that should be what a teacher is. You need to be a knowledgeable practitioner. And I don't think they gain the knowledge that they should at university or teachers' colleges or whatever they're called in the country that you're listening from. Okay?
Yeah, and I'm sure things have changed since I graduated, but I'm not sure that they've changed that much. I know we were taught a lot about how to keep our children, our students engaged, and how to make our lessons fun, and how to, all of that kind of stuff. And
Learning isn't
it's
fun.
just
Learning is hard. You know,
it's hard.
you should make it enjoyable, but the enjoyment should come in the success that they achieve, and not just making it, like a clown show. Yeah, and people don't understand that success leads to motivation, and it's not the other way around. Motivation is really great to get someone started on something, but it doesn't help you learn. But achieving success, no matter how small it is, motivates you to continue. Now, those are things you didn't learn, I'm sure, at university.
No. So going back to your frustration and why you launched into this, incredible, I guess, course of sharing research with teachers, is you felt, you were working so hard in the classroom and you were doing all the things that you thought you should be doing, and there were still students not to be reached. I think about teachers who are sort of refusing to dive into this research and really try to understand the whole concept behind the cognitive psychology and the, how students learn, because I think there's nothing more frustrating than working so hard every day and still not seeing success. And I wish that I could share with teachers that, the whole work smarter, not harder thing,
Yeah,
there is something to that. And I think that I think teachers would be much less frustrated if they would just give this a chance and
yeah.
just, look into how learning happens. Just
But it
pick up
takes
that
it
book,
takes time and
teachers.
it takes effort. They already have a full-time job. It
Yeah.
takes time and it takes effort to do it, which means that if, as a school district or whatever, you want your teachers to teach better, to teach smarter and not harder,
Yeah.
you need to also give them the time and also
Yeah.
the reason to do this. And that could mean not getting your license renewed if you haven't taken the proper cognitive psychology courses. I mean, there's no doctor that I know of who doesn't keep up with the medical journals, and it's a requirement of their profession to do that. I know of no lawyer in the Netherlands. I can only speak for the Netherlands. I mean, I've lived here now for 52 years. Yeah. I know of no lawyer in the Netherlands that doesn't constantly go back to school, first
Yeah.
follow the law journals, but also go back to school to refresh their knowledge. But it's also required for the profession to do it. And teachers are one of the I don't know of any auto mechanics
Yeah.
that don't do that. But teachers often don't. And I
Yeah.
don't understand that. You can't teach today with what you maybe learned poorly 35 or 40 years ago.
Yes, and I think, we've already talked about how the teacher training programs are really void of so much of this. And
Yeah,
so it's more important than ever for teachers to find professional developments that actually bring this in. And they exist. I mean, we have research ed now
yeah,
that's all over the world. We have actually Carl Hendrick, who you wrote this book with. I mean, he travels the world sharing his knowledge. He, like you, shares his research for free
yeah.
on X on his Substack, and it's so helpful and very practical. And I think I'm seeing more and more classroom
But it
teachers
needs to
sort of
be,
take this up.
Beanie, it needs to be institutionalized.
Yeah,
You can't
yeah,
have it be dependent upon whether or not a specific teacher in a school thinks, hey, um, I want to see what that cognitive load theory or what that classroom management or what that um, uh, um, desirable difficulties is and how I can use it. It needs to be institutionalized in a positive sense
yeah.
so that it becomes a part of your normal routine. There has to be room for it, but it also needs to be required. You just can't, like think that if you offer it out there, people will make use of it.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yes,
so,
unfortunately, yeah, teachers have to get so many professional development hours, but unfortunately, they're offered a lot of garbage, and sometimes the garbage is easier to sit and listen
or
to,
sounds
or more
better,
fun.
or
And
yeah, exactly.
so it's, yes, I'm hoping, as I see more and more teachers engaged in this, and more people like yourself and Carl sharing this widely, I'm hoping it becomes something that draws the attention of those people who say, you know what,
Because,
until you've done these professional developments, you can't, you don't get your credits or something like
yeah,
that. But I think we're a long way off here in the United States with that,
I think
unfortunately.
so. And seeing as that you no longer have a Department of Education, it's even farther away. But let's not get into politics.
Well, that's fair. We'll see what happens there. Well, so we both know that there is no magic bullet when it comes to fixing education. There are so many issues. It's such an interesting field. Um, but but if there's one thing that you could suggest to school leaders or classroom teachers to say, this is going to make the most significant positive impact in your school, in your district, in your classroom, what would that be?
Now, I think it might be two things. One of them is determine what a student knows and teach them accordingly. We go back to 1963, 1968. David Ausubel was talking in those terms. Determine what a student knows and teach them accordingly. That would be the first rule, first thing that teachers should might help fix education. The second thing is once you know that, know how to teach them accordingly. And if you can do those two things, you determine what they know and teach them accordingly based upon good evidence informed theory
Mm,
and results, then you don't have a magic bullet, but you have the pathway to better education and better learning.
yeah. Well, hopefully, people are hearing that and are thinking, okay, how do we make this
Put it as a
happen? And
headline, yeah?
there you go.
Determine what a student
There you
knows
go.
and teach them accordingly.
So you've been around long enough to see this. Oftentimes, we have really great ideas. Um, People scoop them up. The initial intent, the initial idea or concept is actually solid and good, and then it somehow gets hijacked or twisted or misconstrued. And then once it's adopted in the classroom, it's actually, you know, worse. It's a bigger problem.
Yeah.
Do you see that happening for this, or is this sort of like, I don't want to say like infallible, but is it less
Constantly.
Okay.
constantly. I mean, if you want to talk about cognitive load theory, people think that all of the principles work for everyone, or they think that the goal of cognitive load theory is to minimize cognitive load and not to optimize it. All of those types of things, those are lethal mutations of cognitive load theory. But with respect to other things, I mean, Alan Pavio with his dual coding theory about how our working memory processes
Mm.
both images and words, yeah, has been lethally mutated into learning styles. So you have verbal learners and you have auditory learners and you have written learners. There are so many of these things, and the simple reason for that is that people don't understand it. They don't have, like I don't want to constantly ride the same hobby horse, but they don't have the knowledge of cognitive psychology to understand what the intervention actually is and why it works. And if you don't understand what it is and why it works, you're prone to misconceptions,
Mhm.
misuse, mutating it into things that it isn't or shouldn't be, which you wouldn't do if you understood how and why and when these things work. So you need to understand our cognitive architecture, the cognitive psychology, just like a doctor has to understand the digestive system in order to possibly and yeah, in order to be able to help someone who says, I have this pain here, I'm pointing to my stomach. They have to understand that. If you hear somebody wheezing, you have to understand how the respiratory system works in order to do something with it and not make use of the wrong thing. If you have COPD, a puffer works. If you have lung fibrosis, it doesn't work. But both of those things sound the same. So you've learned
Mhm.
about it. You've learned, hey, they have problems breathing. Let's give them a puffer. And it doesn't work. You're lethally mute because you don't understand the difference between lung fibrosis and COPD. So you choose the wrong thing or you use something in the wrong way. You use a screwdriver as a chisel and the other way around.
Mm. So what I'm hearing you say is we need to make sure that we don't just give teachers a surface level understanding of this, that they
Definitely not.
actually need
You're
to
teaching your
dive deep.
children.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
don't want your doctor to only have a surface level knowledge of
yeah.
what you look like. Yeah. You want them to have a
Well,
deep
and I
knowledge. You want them to have a deep knowledge of how your body works. No, you want them
hear
to have the
a
same thing.
research on that people who take the introduction classes think that
Yeah.
they're more knowledgeable
A
than they
little bit
are.
of
That
knowledge
was,
is very dangerous.
yeah. Yes. I mean, I really do think that, and I love that you guys included the lethal mutation section in how learning happens,
Yeah.
because I think that that's a really good thing for teachers to look at and go,
I don't
I
want
need
to
to
blow
make
my
sure I
own
don't do
horn, but
that.
I think you can add to that how teaching happens. That's the follow up to it.
Okay,
Book
I have
to it.
not gotten that one, but I need to get that
Go
one.
by it.
So yes, yes, I've already
That's
ordered
just a follow up. I mean,
the instructional illusion.
it's kind of like in that cascade that I was talking about. If you understand how learning happens, then the next thing you have to do is to understand how teaching happens. Yeah, and so we decided to make a follow up book of that with 35 seminal articles about teacher effective teaching, things like that, instructional interventions, those types of things. That's in how teaching happens. It's just the brother or sister publication of how learning happens.
Definitely have to get that one. And I would just encourage any teachers, any educators, whether you're a classroom teacher or you're an educational leader, I would encourage you to pick this up. Don't be intimidated by the idea of looking at 35 different research articles. I love the way that you all put them together in a very digestible way with the summaries, and I even like the part of why
Well,
you should read this article. Just tell me
yeah,
why important to me. So I
Yeah,
think that's
why you should
fantastic.
read it, what the article, what the research was about, but then also what does it mean to teaching? How can you use it in your class? Some takeaways from it. Those are all aspects of it. So it's not just dry from this was the research done and they found this, but I'm doing it in a language that you should understand. But it also contains other aspects of how what it means for teaching and how you can use it. Not should use it. Listen very well. How you could use it in your teaching. That's what this was in the book.
I
Okay,
mean, I could actually see this as a semester long course in an
definitely.
education training program. I would have, like I said, would have benefited from this so much more than some of my courses that I had to take in there. Um, so your book that's coming out in the fall, I have already pre-ordered it. I think August or September is when I'm
They
supposed to
said
get it.
August
We'll see.
26th in Europe, and
Okay.
sometime in September, the
Okay.
publisher is trying to get it together that Amazon US and Amazon UK are at the same time. But because it's
Okay.
printed in the Netherlands and it has to be shipped, or in the Netherlands, in England, it has to be shipped to the United States, and you have tariffs, I think, there, and all types of things. I don't know.
Okay.
I I heard something about that. There's like a 3 week delay between when
Okay.
people get it in Europe and when people can get it in the States. But we're trying to get that
Okay.
resolved.
Well, okay. Well, I look forward to it. It'll be here before I know it. And but I really know why you wrote it. Things like learning styles that
That's not
linger
in it.
on.
That's not in it. We were originally going to write something about learning paradoxes, but we realized that a couple of the things that we were writing about weren't paradoxes, and we decided, like I've written books in Dutch and in English about myths, and we've talked about those myths, but we were looking at it. We said, when people look at a teacher, when a parent looks at a teacher, when a district head looks at a teacher, when a politician looks at a teacher, it's kind of like when they look at an illusionist. They see things, but they have no idea what's happening behind the curtain. Yeah. And so we chose 10 illusions. And it's illusions and not illusionists. We don't say that teachers are illusionists and they're doing things like illusionists are doing. No, people look at it, and because they don't have the proper knowledge, don't understand what's actually happening. Yeah. So we chose 10 illusions that we thought were there. Um, James Randi, an American illusionist, unfortunately has died. I've read all of his books, and he went on to unmask illusionists, not the illusion, the illusionists. And what he said is, when you normally try to do that, what they'll do is they'll take along scientists and other types of people to try to unmask it and understand what's going on. But the thing that you need to do is take along an illusionist because they know where to look. The physicist believes her or his eyes. The magician, illusionist, doesn't. They know what's being done so that you don't even see what's going on. Okay? Now, this book is based upon that idea. What if you had the knowledge of the illusionist? If you had the knowledge that you should have, what is actually happening under those illusions? Yeah. So we discuss, like 10 illusions within the book, and I don't know if I want to take off the tip of the veil or of the
No.
iceberg on this, but we have like one of the illusions is the illusion of performance. That performance is the same
Mm,
as learning. So we discuss the performance illusion in the book. Um, we discuss the student-centered illusion that people think
mm,
that student-centered means that the learner determines what's going on, but student-centered doesn't mean that. So we discuss 10 different illusions and we take a look behind the curtain. I'm always thinking of the Wizard of Oz, and
Mm.
yeah, don't mind the man behind the curtain, type of thing. Yeah? Um, uh, this is what we're trying to do with that book, and we're not
Well, it sounds like you will ruffle some feathers here in the United States, which they
always.
need to be ruffled. They
That's my
need to be
goal.
ruffled.
Yeah, that's possibly my goal in life.
Yeah, yeah.
Ruffle feathers.
There you go. Well, I will say they need to be ruffled, and I am so thankful that you share the research behind why you're ruffling the feathers. It's not
Yeah,
just to make people mad. It's actually
no,
to improve teaching. It's to improve learning, and really to improve the futures and lives of students.
okay.
And we've got to do that. I mean, it's people think, why are we looking to the UK? Why are we looking, to Europe for education? And I think, while American students and teachers face some, I guess, unique challenges and obstacles here, students in America learn the same way that students in the Netherlands or in Australia or in UK learn. And I think that you all are providing the research behind that.
That's one
Teachers
of the illusions
everywhere
we
should use.
discuss. One of the illusions, it's called the uniqueness illusion we
Uh,
discuss. And that, well, yes, like people say to me, are you're talking about cognitive architecture? Are you saying that everybody's the same? I say, no, I'm not saying that. Everybody is unique, but we all learn in the same way, just like we all digest food and breathe in the same way. And somebody who's, I'll talk in American terms, 6'6" needs different foods than someone or amounts than who's 5'1". Someone who runs the marathon needs different nutrition than someone running the 100-meter or who just sits behind a desk. Yeah? But it's all based upon the exact same digestive and muscular
right.
system and respiratory system that's unique. And you do in America have your unique problems and unique situations. Most countries don't have 50 different states that all can determine what's going on and school districts that can determine what's going on. That's unique. But we all should teach in the same way to have learning be effective, efficient,
Yeah.
and satisfactory or enjoyable.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I was excited about the instructional illusion book before, but I'm even more excited now because I think it's going to
and
be
it's short.
a great read. So yeah, I love that. I love that.
Okay.
Well, as usual, we could go on for a long, long time and talk about this because I just find it fascinating. And again, you know, so grateful for your book. If you don't have it in the audience, How Learning Happens, How Teaching Happens, pre-order your instructional illusions. Keep them on your desk, use them as a reference. I do. I keep my How Learning Happens on my desk and reference it almost daily, actually, just because I want to look
It's
something up.
fine. Thank you.
If Yeah, if you're not following Dr. Kirschner on Substack and on X, you need to be doing that. And when we post this, we will definitely include links to both your Substack and your X
And you can also
account so that
post links
all
to
your
my email address. Anybody who has
okay.
questions can get in touch with me.
Well, I'm so grateful for that, that you're so accessible and that you're so generous with your knowledge and your wisdom. And,
That's the idea.
I hope that more teachers, more educators here in the United States, but even around the world, will take advantage of what they have before them. I feel like I'm sort of getting my real teaching degree through X and through Substack, thanks to people like you. So,
Okay.
I'm
Thank you very
thankful for
much.
that. And so hopefully we will chat once Instructional Illusions comes out, and I'd love to have
Okay.
you
Perfect.
and Carl back, and that would be great fun. So, but thank you so
Okay.
much for coming on today and sharing with us.
Now, Beanie, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you so much. Bye.